Heath did bring some baits to give away tonight, so we want to make sure we get that. How you want to do this, man?
No.
Trivia or something. We like to do trivia. Trivia is fun.
What would be a good trivia question?
What would be a good trivia question?
Could be if they know the nickname of a certain bait.
The nickname of a certain bait. You talking about the straight tail worm?
Yeah.
Who knows the nickname for the Magnum crawler? He's big, giant, straight tail worm. You might know the nickname of it? What? Oh!
He almost had it.
He almost had it. Big Perm. There it is. All right, you want a gizzard chat or you want baby poachers?
Baby poachers.
Baby poachers. That's a smart man right there, too. There you go, bro. All right, couple more. Who in here? Let's see. I like to give them away to the people that watch the channel. So who can tell me who saw the video of me and Heath Taylor and my buddy Chris Blackman on Lake Monticello in the summer last year? Anybody see that video? We broke a significant weight milestone. Who knows what that was? 100 pounds in a single day. That's right. There you go.
Line through or weedless?
Line through or weedless? Weedless. There you go. You'll need an 8 out on that one?
Yeah.
8 out on that one. That's a 6 inch. That's the brand new 6 inch. That one's brand new. Not very many people have that size yet. All right, we got one more. You got anything else? Got another question?
See if they were really paying attention if they watched the channel.
Okay.
And I'm trying to remember.
Tell me what it was. What are you talking
How
about?
many different smash take baits did we catch them on during the smash take bait challenge last?
That is a tough one. Now that you're going to have to watch real close to know that one because that's a hard one for us to remember. I do remember the number though. So we had a smash take challenge where we tried every time we catch a fish on a bait, we changed to another smash take bait. Who can tell me how many different baits we caught? How many different smash take baits we caught fish on that day?
And that caught 2 of them.
That did catch 2
because you cheated.
I did cheat. That's right. He caught one on this one on the first cast, and then he couldn't throw it anymore. So later in the day, he was whooping me real bad, so I picked this up and threw it and caught him. Anybody know the answer to that?
I think it was 9.
Who said 9? My man, right there. My man. How'd you know that? Did you read my lips from way over there? That's what it was. There you go, boy.
He might be a cop when he grows up.
Yeah. We're going to, hey, y'all watch out for that one right there, I'm telling you. All right. Is there, I know we've been going for a while on swim baits. Is there any questions or anything on anything else?
Because I'm probably just going to, this won't take long.
You want current conditions or anything like that?
Yeah, these bigger ones like this, are they mostly, you usually use those mostly in deeper water?
That one right there, I would actually throw it shallow more than I would deep. I will still throw it out deep on the stock, because if you get the stock hook, it actually runs really well with it. And you can slow roll it out deeper, but most of the time I'm fishing that in like 6 foot or less.
Yeah, and deeper's a relative term there. Like you're not going to go out there and throw that bait in 20 foot of water, but 10, 12, something like that. If you want to really slow roll it, yeah.
Well, that's what 8 to 12.
Yeah. Now I have. I've even fished. Of course, I'm weird and I throw swim baits in places that a lot of people don't throw swim baits. But as light and as slow as this sinks, and because it's got a small little tin insert in it, and that's all the weight besides the hook, and it sinks relatively slow. There's a certain little lake that I fish in the summertime that the fish will get out offshore and suspend over 30 foot of water, but they'll be 20 foot deep. And I'm talking it'll be a wolf pack of them. I will throw this thing out there and count it down because there's nothing to get hung on where a lot of times they're at because they're suspended. I'll count something like this down to 20 foot and just crawl it. And you can do the same thing with that on that weighted hook. But that is kind of the exception to what normally happens. A lot of times I'm fishing it shallow grass, around the edge of grass, and stuff like that.
Yeah, shallow. And then, to me, the one place where that thing really shines, the thing about a swim bait is it has, without a doubt, of all bass fishing baits that we throw, the best drawing power is a swim bait. It'll suck a fish in from a long ways off, and that goes for down too. So especially if you have some deeper grass, like Lake Welsh, doesn't so much anymore now the water's down, but used to have deeper grass. Brandy Branch has deeper grass, and some of these lakes around here will have deeper grass. So if you get a grass line out there in 8, 10, 12, 15 foot of water, even on Brandy Branch it goes out to 20 foot sometimes, and there's a gap in the grass, and the gap between the surface and the grass is, anywhere from 3 to say 6 or 7 foot from the top of the grass, and you can see it on your electronics. That bait shines right there because you can throw it out there and fish it so slow over the top of that grass, and those fish will suck up out of that grass to come get it really well. It's a really good bait over flooded grass.
That video that we were talking about, catching the 9 different, 8 of those were swim baits.
Yeah. I caught one on a smash stick just to kind of give us another bait, but yeah.
Well, he couldn't catch anything on anything else. But.
That's going to be all for tonight. We're going to wrap this up.
But, that was exactly the scenario we had.
Yeah.
We had grass coming up and then open spot, 3 to 4 foot between top of grass and top of the, on the water surface. And you just threw it out there and you just tick the top of that hydrilla with it. And they were just wolf packs out there. And a lot of times when you're fishing an area like that and that water was really clear. Clear water is a plus, in my opinion, not an absolute necessity. A lot of people think it's a necessity for swim bait fishing. Not an absolute necessity. I've caught them in stained water plenty of times.
I used to be real uncomfortable throwing swim baits in dirtier water until I started running around with him. And I'd be up there like, I need a hard thumping bait, I need a cheddar bait, a crank bait, something that vibrates, and he's over there with a swim bait just whacking.
If those fish, like that Monticello we did in February, that water was
dirty.
Was kind of dirty.
It was dirty.
And I'm throwing that weedless poacher that it thumps pretty good, but it don't thump that much.
It ain't a real big wag, no.
And the way I look at it, if those fish can find a shad swimming around through there, then they're going to be able to find my bait.
Yeah.
There's no question because they're not gonna stop eating stuff that looks like a fish just because the water's a little dirty. They're used to eating fish, they're gonna keep eating fish. Now there are, of course, if it gets just chocolate milk dirty, I don't have as much confidence. But I love clear water in the fact that when the water is really clear, and I don't know if how many of y'all have really thrown swim baits a lot. When the water is really clear, that's when you get those wolf packs, and Welsh can be unbelievable in that sense. And any of these clear lakes, if you've ever thrown out there and be reeling a swim bait, and all of a sudden it feels like one tries to take it from you, just boom, and then nothing, and you just keep reeling, boom, and you think, well, that's the same fish, it just keeps coming up and hitting it. That's not the same fish. There's 4 to 5 to 8 or 10 bass taking turns coming up and they'll come up and trying to kill it, and they'll come up and try to kill it, and then one will finally decide that he wants it more than the rest of them. He'll come and just rip it out of your hand. Yeah, it's not the same fish.
We call that the self-defense hook set.
Yeah, it's not the same fish
because you're sitting there going like this, and you go bump, and you go whoa. It's just the self-defense hook set.
Yeah, for years in my mind, even I was thinking it was the same fish. Man, he's still hitting it. He's following it. Yeah. Until I stuck a camera.
That was so cool, man.
About that far in front of a swim bait, one of those inline cameras, and threw it out there, and then went home and watched the video on my computer, and you just see this wolf pack of fish coming up behind it and just taking turns, just tagging it till one of them grabs it. And you're like, okay, now I understand exactly what's going on.
Like you said, in that scenario, the clear water is key if you want to get clear water is better for swim baits because of what I said earlier, the drawing power. Swim bait will draw them in. Well, the clearer the water is, the further away they can see it, and the further away, so you're drawing from a broader range in clear water, and so you have a bigger opportunity to get more fish gathered behind it and following it because they do follow it. But to me, so one thing technique-wise for swim baits that I've taken into account after learning this about the wolf pack scenario and all that, the clearer the water is, the less thorough and the faster I'll move. Because if the water's really clear, once I fish that bait here, every fish that wants that swim bait with inside of it has already had a chance to follow it. So in dirty water, I might make a cast here, I might make a cast here, I might make a cast here, and in clear water, I'm going to make a cast here, and then I'm going to cast over here. And I can cover the water a lot faster because those fish draw into it from further away.
And you catch that fish, say that you've got that clear water wolf pack thing going on, you will see a lot of times if you're paying attention, you'll reel it up and pull your bait out of the water and look down, and there'll be 4 following. Well, that'll tell you, okay, well, I need to slow it down a little, or I need to do a little bit of a direction change, either a pause or something. Sometimes to make them
Trigger bite.
if you didn't get bites. Now, if you got bites on that cast before that, fire it straight back out there. Because what happens when even if you catch a fish out of that school, because like he said, you'll get an initial fish or two start following it. Well, as you're coming down, well, this guy over here, he's like, well, what's he looking at? And they all just start getting behind it, and they're just tracking it. Rarely on these big swim baits, it happens sometimes. You throw it in there, and right when it hits the water, one just comes up and blows up on it. It happens, but a lot of times you make a long cast, and you're just doing this, and they're just tracking it.
After they've tracked it.
They're tracking it, and one of them finally decides he's going to take it away from the rest of it.
That's another thing. Long cast, like the longest cast you can make, is super important for swim bait fishing because they tend to follow it so much. It takes time for that fish to find it, track it, get behind it, and follow it before he'll commit to it on a swim bait, more so than any other bait that I know of. So a long cast, the longer cast you make, what you got to think of is I may throw a square bill crankbait to that stump right there, and my crankbait bounces off that stump and the fish eats it. Well, with a swim bait, that fish ain't even got behind it yet. So you really got to get the bait out there, because the first portion of your cast is just getting the fish to come look at it. And then you got to have more cast in there to let them follow it and get committed to it. So the longer cast you can make, the better.
And then when you catch a fish out of that school, some of those may follow him to the boat. Let that fish go, fire it right back out there, because they're going to turn and run back to where they came from. And you can just sit there. We've sat up there before, and I filmed a show with Bill Wilcox at Honey Hole on Welsh one spring. And man, we got into them, and it was almost every cast there for a little while. I'd set the hook, bam, and it was funny because I brought a line through poacher and a convict, and I started catching him. He was throwing a rattle trap, and he started catching them pretty good, and then he quit catching them, and I was still catching them on the line through poacher. Well, it got all tore up, so I had to put some mend it and stuff on it, and lay it down on the bottom of the boat and let it kind of dry, so so I can keep fishing with it. So I picked up a convict, fired it out there, and first cast I caught one on the convict. And Bill's like, can I use your other swim bait? I was like, well, it's not quite dry. So he picks it up, and so we were both throwing swim baits, and it was almost every cast. And it was funny because one of us would be running the trolling motor or in the front of the boat. I'd set the hook. He's like, all right, switch. And then he'd get up there and throw up here to that spot. Then he'd set the hook while I was unhooking this fish, and we just kept switching. It's just like musical chairs. Mm-hmm. And when you get a school of fish fired up like that, it's unlike any bite, because they hit a swim bait like a bigger profile swim bait like these. They hit it so hard. And
it's one of two things. And I always tell people with a big swim bait, if you think you need to set the hook, you don't. Like, you'll feel that nose punch, that boom, boom, boom. And people are like, oh, does he have it? No, he doesn't have it. Because when he has it, this is what you're going to feel. It's either going to be the self-defense situation where you're like, oh, and you're just holding on to the rod and pulling back, or they're going to hit it so hard, they're going to knock a bunch of slack in your line. You're just going to be like, oh, and then you're going to set the hook anyway, because it's just such a different level of bite than you're used to feeling. It's not a load-up bite like a chatterbait has. It's not even a hard thump like you get on a crankbait. It's just way more violent than anything you've ever felt.
And I've taken people that have never thrown big swim baits fishing before, and get them on a swim bait bite, and they don't. You try to explain that if you've never felt it. You try to explain it to somebody, and they don't get it. But
it almost scares you.
Then they throw out there. They throw out there, and they get that first bite, and their eyes get this big, and they look at you with a big smile, and they're okay. Now I understand what you were talking about. But the key, like Billy was saying, and I know we've talked about this before on shows and in seminars, is don't knee-jerk reaction, especially with a weedless swim bait. Do not jerk as soon as you feel that fish slam it. Because a lot of times they're wolf packing, or they'll come up and try to crush it.
They'll even hit it with their mouth closed a lot of times.
I don't have a lot of content on my YouTube, but I do have a video of some of that. Mm-hmm. Smash Tech Baits on the YouTube. There's some of that video that I took. I just put a couple little clips on there. Just keep reeling. Just keep the rod pointed straight at that bait. Just keep reeling. Just keep reeling. And whenever he either tries to rip it out of your hand completely, then set the hook, or what will happen a lot of times, they'll grab it and you just keep reeling it, and they'll turn and start going that way. Just reel into them and let it get tight, and then just lean back into them as hard as you can. Don't try to jerk like as soon as you feel that bite pop, because you'll just pop that swim bait out of their mouth a lot of times. You got to let them load up on those bigger baits. Real quick, talk about line throughs. Very simple. It's basically exactly what it means. There's a tube in all of my line throughs that goes through a little tin weight. You take and run your line through here, out the belly, tie on the treble hook that it comes with, and if you'll look, these owner stinger treble hooks have one point that will be in line, if y'all understand what I'm saying, will be in line with that eye of that hook. See what I'm talking about? This point up here is directly in line with the eye of that hook. It's sharp. And a lot of people, this kind of goes back to detail, and I'm a little OCD about some things, but this is one of them. Is take that point that lines up with the eye, and you'll measure, and on these gizzard shad, it's right in front of this back fin right here. You'll take the point that lines up with that eye, and you'll stick it back in the belly, right in front of that fin, and that hook will lay right there between those fins. And that's the 7-inch and the 6-inch, and even on that bluegill.
And because that eye of the hook is vertical, it allows that split ring to lay.
It allows that split ring to lay exactly as it should, right there, with just a little bit of slack. You don't want it pulling up against it, because if you have it pushing that tube, it's going to put pressure on that insert and cause it to want to try to tear a little bit. You want it to just kind of be sitting there on a almost tight, but not quite.
And getting that thing lined up super flat and super straight and all that is so important when you have that much plastic in the water with no weight on it. Any little unbalancing of any kind will cause that bait to start not running true.
And with that in line like that, and that split ring up against there, that bait's going to track true.
It's going to track perfect.
Now, whenever that fish eats it, it's going to come loose, and this bait's just going to be sliding up and down the line. He can't use this weight to throw the bait. You hardly ever, once you've got one hooked, you will hardly ever lose him once you've got him hooked with the line through. Like I said, the advantages are that you have a better hookup ratio. Yes, it's not as weedless. You can't throw it up in the matted thick stuff like you can a weedless. But
and it's real bad around like timbered points and stuff.
Yeah,
out
timber
here,
is going to get hung up.
Yeah,
but if I'm fishing over grass where I have that much room between the grass and the surface, I love. And truthfully, there's a little different action even in the same bait if it's a line through or if it's a weedless. This bait is going to swim slightly different than that bait because the center of gravity and the weight is right here on this one. Now on that one, the center of gravity is going to be further back because of that weighted belly hook. So they're going to swim a little bit different. Same way with the poacher and the weedless poacher. So it's going to have a little bit of different action. I've seen where some days they want one a little more than the other. Like that, all these weedless baits, they're not very heavy. And I've actually kind of refined that weight in them with working with some other guides back a few years ago. We really worked at trying to get that insert the exact weight it needed to be. I'd make one, send it to them, and they'd be like, no, it needs to be a little lighter. I'd make one, send it to them, no, it needs to be a little lighter. And then we finally got it down to where it was exactly what they wanted, and I made them out of tin. Years ago I'd make them out of lead, and there's still a lot of the big name swim bait companies are making their inserts out of lead. And if you've ever had one with a lead insert and look in there in your box after a few months, it's turned the whole bait kind of white and nasty looking. It's because that lead reacts to that plastic. That tin will never react to that plastic like that.
Yeah, it discolors your bait. It sure does. That it?
I don't know. We can keep talking about swim baits.
I know with you we can. I know. Always like to give you guys a little current condition, especially you guys that have stayed the whole time. And y'all fishing the high school tournament and everything. Really appreciate that. You know, it's tough. When you draw the backside of a cold front and the water's already cooled off as much as it has, Main Lake water temps today were in the lower end of the 60s. When that water's that temperature and you're on the backside of a cold front, boys, it's just going to be tough. You're not going to go out there and catch a whole bunch of fish. I mean, you're not going to go out and catch big numbers. Unless you get a lot of sunshine at the end of the afternoon, you might catch some numbers. You know, or if the water temp starts trending back the other direction, you might run into a wolf pack or something like that. But for what you guys are going to face tomorrow, you're going to face post-frontal conditions. What's the wind going to do tomorrow? Anybody know?
Cold.
5 to 5.
Slick, post-frontal, cold weather, cold air temps. It's going to be a grind. And I'm going to tell you, you got to fish hard and you got to fish thorough and you got to be confident that you're around fish and you got to stick with it. One thing that I can tell you is a lot of these secondary points and a lot of these bridge corners and bridge pylons have a lot of fish on them right now. There is, especially these bridges and these creeks. These creeks right here, and some of the other creeks on the lake too, be it Birch Creek, be it, you know, way back up on the north end creeks, these creek arm bridges that have these narrow gaps. It pinches everything down so tight and everything moves so much throughout the fall that as there's fish coming in and out every day, and as they go through there, they get so condensed in those narrow gaps on those creek bridges. We started on one this morning, and I mean, we literally had a 15-foot tall wall of shad under our trolling motor on our front grab. I mean, and it was under there for a while. I mean, it was millions of bait fish stacked up under our boat this morning. And anytime you got that kind of condensing of bait fish, that's going to draw some attention, of course. Now, we sat there for the first 30 minutes this morning and didn't get a bite on that big old wall of bait fish that we had around, you know, around those pylons. So, if you're seeing life on your electronics, or you're seeing visible signs of life on the surface, or anything like that, and you're confident that there's fish there, what I'm telling you is tomorrow, you know, this weekend in these post-frontal conditions, don't give up on it too easy. Just because they ain't biting don't mean they ain't there. And this is where it takes a lot of faith in your abilities and a lot of confidence in yourself to stick with those fish. And the way to do it, a suspending jerkbait, a deep suspending jerkbait is great right now. Great way to catch good fish right now. An Alabama rig is a great way. And an Alabama rig, they're just starting to get on that Alabama rig, but it'll be good throughout the rest of the winter, starting right now today, going forward for the next month and a half, whatever. Alabama rig can play really throughout the whole winter to some degree or another, depending on what the weather does. Now, right now, this time of year, I like to fish that Alabama rig. Every time I get a chance, in these post-frontal conditions, I want my Alabama rig to be on an open jig hook, like you've traditionally seen it. I do not want to rig weedless swim baits on an Alabama rig this time of year, and I'm going to tell you why. It's hard to get these fish to bite in these post-frontal conditions, and they're not biting real aggressive and real good when they do bite. So I don't want any chance of that fish being able to bite a weedless bait and not get hooked up. I have a better chance of hooking them up if I've got that open jig hook on them. Plus, I'm fishing them mostly around bridge corners and pylons, so it doesn't matter that I have these open jig hooks. It works effectively that way. The key thing, the biggest key to it, is to make sure somehow on your electronics, because this can be different every day and it can change throughout the day. You need to really pay attention and monitor the depth that those fish are using. Are they suspending up those bridge pylons? Are they suspending out off the corners? Or are they down on the bottom? This morning they were down on the bottom. So we were taking that Alabama rig, we were throwing it all the way down. We were throwing it out there long cast, letting it get all the way to the bottom, pointing the rod down and just slow rolling it back to the boat. That's how we were fishing it. Another bait that can get you bit every year in November on Lake Fork. It doesn't matter what year it is. It doesn't matter if the lake's high, the lake's low, whatever. If you can find these fish on these points and these bridge corners, you can catch them on a finesse shaky head. A straight tail worm is a straight tail worm. I like the 6th Sense Divine shaky head worm. It was literally designed for the shaky head that I use, so it works really well for me. A Zoom trick worm works really good. I've caught a gazillion fish in the month of November on a Zoom trick worm on a shaky head out here on this lake. They are biting that a little bit right now out here. But all these bites, keep in mind, we're not going out there on these post-frontal days and catching a lot of fish. But it's a great way for you guys to get some bites and be confident is to get around these secondary points and these bridge corners and just grind it out. And especially for you tournament guys that are trying to catch under the slot fish, that little shaky head or even a drop shot. If you like a drop shot, that's a great way to do it right now too. But a straight tail finesse worm bite is a real good way for you guys to be confident that you can go out there and get 5 in the boat on a day when there's not going to be a lot of teams that weigh 5 fish anymore. I'm just going to tell you. There's not going to be a lot of teams that weigh 5 fish. So if you can go get 5 fish in your boat, you're going to have a good finish. And then if you can get lucky and catch the right size unders, you might be way on up there. And the other part that's beautiful, especially about that Alabama rig, is it will catch you an over on these bridge pilots. Around these bridges, that Alabama rig can pop you an over at any moment. Those big fish are moving in and out of those creeks too. They're stopping for all those bait fish the same way those little ones are. And we're catching big slot fish, on a pretty regular basis on that. The other thing that does exist, and I wouldn't suggest it for a tournament fisherman unless you just want to go try to catch an over. You want to go try and catch the biggest fish of your life. It's a great time of year to do it, and that is out on these road beds and pond dams, a big old hubcap size piece of metal called a flutter spoon. Get the biggest flutter spoon you can get, put it in your hand, and don't let go of it. And if you're staying around those schools of yellow bass and those schools of white bass, for me this week, you're going to get at least 2 chances. Sometimes a few more than that. Sometimes you might get 3 or 4. Sometimes, one day when we didn't fish very long, we only had 1 bite on it. But the problem with that is landing them. A flutter spoon might be the hardest bait that we fish with in bass fishing to land a fish on. And all I can tell you to help you is don't jerk on the hook set, reel into them and pull. Don't snap it when you set the hook. The other thing is fish it on a much lighter action rod than you want to, because it's going to be a pain in the rear end to cast it on a lighter, like a medium action rod. But get you like a 7/6 medium action rod and throw it on lighter line, and that'll help you not pull so hard, because you'll know, hey, this ain't 20-pound line. Throw it on 12 or 15-pound line, and you'll know you can't pull subconsciously. You won't pull on that fish as hard, because once you've got that hook dug in, if you start pulling on that fish at all, she's coming up. And when she gets to the surface with that giant piece of metal, the odds of it staying pinned are very, very low. If that fish jumps, especially any distance from the boat with that flutter spoon, the majority of them come unbuttoned. Just the majority of them do. But we're talking about some big ones now. This is a deal. These fish are out there eating yellow bass that are bigger than my hand all day, every day. That's all they're doing. And you get that flutter spoon down there enough and get one to slip up and bite on it, it's going to be like, I'm not talking about that's a nice 4-pounder. That you do every once in a while, but that's not what's happening right now. Like every time you lean into one of these spoonfish, it's like a 7-8 pounder at least. And you're talking about borderline over category at that weight. So all of these fish that we're catching on flutter spoons right now are like right around the over mark. They're right there. We've had just a really unlucky week landing them. The guy this morning, he had 2 bites on it this morning. One of them was on there for a little while. Rod bowed all the way up. Knew exactly what was going on. It was the right fish, no doubt about it. That ain't one of them crazy white bass that was overachieving or nothing like that. This is no doubt what fish this is, and it just comes unbuttoned. He didn't do anything wrong there. The fish never jumped. It just, man, it's a flutter spoon. It's hard to land them on that.
And you watch Chris Zaldane almost win that tournament this year. That's what happened to him.
Yeah.
He had 2 or 3. They just come unbuttoned
on the flutter spoon. And this is Chris Zaldane is probably top 5 fisherman on planet Earth right now. The last few years, he's extremely good, and he's having a hard time landing these fish when he's got all of his focus. It's crunch time, and he's dialed in, and he's having a hard time landing them. So that goes to tell you a lot about how hard it is to land them on these big spoons with these big fish. And that's why that wasn't the first thing I told you guys for you guys that are fishing a tournament, because you could go out there and get a 0 real quick doing that. But if you're fortunate enough to go out there and get you 5 bites and you got 5 unders and you want to go try to just catch the giantest, most biggest fish you've ever seen, that's proper English right there, by the way. Yeah. Giantest. It's the best way to do it. It's one of the best times. Like, how often in the year can you go, there's double-digit fish right there? Other than maybe if you find one on a bed, you can go out to these road beds and pond dams, and if you find these massive schools of yellow bass out there, and it'll look like somebody peppered the bottom of your graph right on the bottom, right on the top of these pond dams and road beds. It'll just look like pepper on your down scan. They're so tightly packed.
There you go. Good job.
When you find one of those, whether you see it or not, I'm telling you right now, I promise you, with everything that I know about fishing, there's at least one, maybe multiple 10-pounders down there, sitting right there. So if you're looking for that in a slot lake tournament scenario, it's real tempting to go out there and try and get it because you know where he is. You got him pinned up, kind of, you know. So it's an awesome deal when you get a bite on it. There is one other technique that's starting to play right now. Now, this is not going to help you tournament guys very much because this is predominantly slot fish. You can do this all day, and it can go as good as it can go, and you might not catch a keeper. But the creek channel jig bite is already starting. We've had hard enough cold fronts to drive some of these fish that were back in the shallow water into the shallower creek channel swings anyway for me. I haven't been fishing a lot of the deeper ones, but some of the shallower creek channel swings are already getting some fish gathered up in the outside bends of the creeks, and you can put your jig down there and drag it through those root systems and let it fall into that creek bed, and you can catch some quality fish doing that. Again, not a lot of bites. There's nothing I'm doing right now where I can say, hey, you're going to go out here and you're going to catch plenty of fish. It's just a grind on these post-frontal situations. And we've had a lot of them here recently. It seems like, you know, we've had a lot of cold fronts. So. Any questions? I know you high school guys aren't allowed to ask questions.
From somebody besides the high
On
school.
the last post-frontal, a week ago, I caught a 9.6 on a poacher. Now, I fished way back in Birch Creek, and I'm in 3 feet of water.
Yeah.
It's chocolate milk. I've caught 25 fish already on orange and red chatterbait. For some reason, they just won't stay off of it. It's the second day, and I said, I'm tired of catching these, and I put on the big swim bait. First catch, right by a stump, 9.6.
Boom.
And I said,
Dirty water.
and you know, it's just like you said last time that you're going to get them of different sizes all together this
Yep.
time of year, and I was catching them from 15 to 25 and a quarter. So
You know, that's one thing.
ready to throw on something orange.
Yeah.
Right,
If you're back in the dirty water.
Yeah, I was in the dirty
Yeah.
water, and it's not, you know, just right off the little 5-foot creek channel.
Yeah.
And they had pushed the gizzard shad up on them, and they were feeding on them like they were jumping all over. And then those big carp, for some reason, there's big carp around. There's all these. That's where that school's gonna be. I don't know why.
Interesting.
I just-
Yeah, I know that water up in Birch, that makes sense that it would be real dirty because, you know, for whatever reason, the grass just didn't take up there this year.
No, they sprayed twice.
Yeah, they were spraying hyacinth. I know all last year, and they sprayed this year. But all the coontail and, you
It's
know,
gone.
the little bit of hydrilla that was here and there, it's all gone.
Yeah, there's
And so most of the lake, the water's really clean, but you get in these areas because we've had some hard rains, and so you get in these areas that don't have the grass, and the backs of the creeks they're real dirty. But the areas that have all the grass in them, like, you know, the running creeks, the glades, all the water's staying real clear because that grass is just acting like a wall, not letting that dirt come down the flow there. That's awesome, though. I mean, and that's, you know, that right there, that story, you know, the enjoyment that you got out of that, that's what we get out of what we do. That's why I come up here. That's why I'm not with my family on a Friday night after, you know, my wife's been working all week and all that. Because and my wife, luckily I have the most understanding wife in the world. She knows when it comes to fishing, like, she just lets me do whatever I need to do because she knows that I can't breathe if I don't go fishing a lot. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just in me. Like, I look back at the most miserable times of my life when I wasn't fishing enough. No matter what else is going on in my life, Marine Corps deployment, job stress, you know, my family life growing up wasn't the best. I come from a split family multiple times and all that stuff. And it's always been, if I was fishing enough, I was happy. And I don't function if I don't fish. And so I just love it so much. And I learned early on when I first really started getting in glass boats out here on my own, that I got just as much pleasure out of bringing somebody with me and helping them catch a fish as I did when I caught it. Like, when I would bring just even around, like I used to take random strangers fishing. Like, I saw a dude bank fishing in a city lake one day, and I said, hey, you want to come in the boat? And we went fishing. And you know, back in the day on different forums and stuff, people would talk about coming to Texas, advice or whatever, and I was, hey, I'm going. If you want to come get in my boat. I used to take random people I never met fishing all the time. And I learned very early on that I needed to be a fishing guide someday. I didn't know how, I didn't know when, but I needed to be a fishing guide. because I get just as much enjoyment and pleasure out of other people catching a fish, and me helping them catch that fish gives me just as much satisfaction, gratification as anything else. And so, you know, when we come up here and we talk about this stuff, we don't preach anything just to preach technique or make ourselves sound good or try to sell you a shirt or try to sell you a guide trip. I don't care. Have I ever asked anybody that's come to a seminar to book a guide trip? I ain't never asked anybody. What I'm doing this for is that right there. Something that we talked about that maybe we clued you into helped you catch a 9-pounder. Man, that's awesome. Dude, a 9-pounder is a special deal.
It was a choke point.
Yeah,
I started working the choke point.
And so, you know, everything that we preach up here, we're living what we're preaching. These things that we're telling you, this is real. This is really what I do on my guide trips. This is really how I go find fish. There's nothing that I'm ever going to tell you or I'm ever going to allow anybody, to my knowledge, to get up here and tell you that's not just real, honest information. And it seems like here lately, we've gotten a lot of feedback of, hey, you said to do this, and I did this, and then boom, this happened. And last night on the live stream, I was talking about post-frontal conditions. I said, hey, if you want to go fish shallow, the best thing that you can do is grab the Movement 80X. It's the hardest thumping, vibrating, deflects the best off cover, and there's something about that bait when the shallow fish shut down, the way it deflects and bounces off cover and how hard it vibrates, it will cause a fish that won't bite anything else to react and lunge at it, and with those treble hooks, you got it. And I said that, and literally the first comment on the next day was something about how the last hard post frontal day, a guy was fishing in a pond and wasn't catching anything. He tied a Movement 80X on, and he caught the biggest fish of his life. You know, and that is why, because, I mean, I'm not doing this because I want you guys to feel sorry for me anyway. I live the most blessed life. I'm living my best life every day right now. So I don't want anybody to feel sorry for me, but boys, it's never ending work. Doing what we do, producing this content, it never stops. When I'm at home, if I'm not coaching my kids' soccer team or eating, I'm working. I'm behind that computer and I'm working on stuff. And it's just a passion. And I've gotten addicted to it. And I don't want to not do it. Like, there's sometimes when I'm like, man, I want to take a break. And then I take a break for like an hour and I'm like, I got to go. And I go back to working because I've gotten addicted to helping other people catch fish. That's just what I do. It's what I love to do more than anything else. So as I usually tend to do with these things, got on a little bit of a soapbox there, and I apologize for that. So. All right, anybody got any more questions? Anything we want to answer? Everything we can. No? Man, it was a long one tonight. Thank each and every one of you so much. I mean, y'all are the reason y'all are what makes me keep working. Every one of y'all and every one of y'all. Thank y'all so much. We appreciate it. Heath, you took a big time out of your family night tonight to come up here, so thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate the giveaways as always. Take care of Lake Fork Marina. Go down there, use that discount, take advantage of that deal they're offering y'all. Support them the way they support us. And we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Thanks for coming.